All right, so hello everybody. Thank you for coming out to CIMFest 2019. My name is Levoski Brown, and I will be basically presenting to you guys about running your own esports team successfly. So I guess let's start with my background, right? So I started in esports, I want to say around three and a half years ago. I basically just started as a volunteer for social media for just a charity company, essentially, that was just getting involved in esports, and they primarily operated out of Smash. Just from my experience with them and just innovating with that company, I went on and I started my own business. It was called Team Detonate. It no longer exists. I merged it into another company. But from learning with each one of those experiences, I ended up getting a job offer with another team called Team Rival. Worked with them for about, I want to say, a year or so, just working in their assistant management department, just helping out wherever I could. That's actually where I got the most of my experience. I was lucky enough to end up in that position and have somebody that was serving as a guide, essentially. So they just taught me everything that I needed to know in regards to managing esports team, creating contracts, understanding esports law, proprietary software, just everything pretty much that I needed to learn at the time. So I took that from that experience and from working at High Res Studios for a bit of time as well, and just made my way into working at Armada about mid-May of last year, and I've been working there since then. So that's pretty much my experience as the whole 3 years of time, just to fill it in. But what is Armada? What's a brand? What's esports exactly? First of all, if you don't know what esports is, if you have absolutely no recollection what it is, and that's for stream as well. If you guys don't know what it is competitive gaming, essentially. It's not unlike sports in many ways. In all honesty, it's very similar to any sports that you may have ever played in your life. Has anyone in the crowd ever played sports at all? Just raise your hand. All right, cool. What sport have you played? Football?
Yeah.
All right. Football as well? Soccer? Swimming and soccer. All right. Anybody back here? Soccer as well? All right, we got a lot of soccer. Wow. Golf. Nice. That's actually one I don't have tons of experience in, but I only recently got more experience with Top Golf and stuff. So that's way more complicated than I thought it was initially. But yeah, so everyone, here has, had some sort of activity that they did growing up, some sort of sport that they played. For me, it was everything that I could possibly do. From age 5, I played football, basketball, soccer, baseball, and then the wild card in there was competitive cheerleading. I'll get into that later. But I did that for the longest time, though. So I did enjoy that. I enjoyed the aspects of doing something at an international level and traveling to do something that I was passionate about and competing at a global level. So naturally, while I was growing up and I played video games all the time, I wished there was a way that I could do all those things that I did in sports, but for video games. Just because, who doesn't want to play video games and make money and compete? So for me, it was a good opportunity to get involved when I found out about esports when I went to college. That was my first interaction with that, in fact. I believe the first PC game I ever played was when I went to college. I played both Smite and League of Legends on the same day, essentially. So League of Legends was something that all my friends were playing in high school. I just never had a PC to play as well, and there was no way I was going to get League of Legends on any school computer. So I just never played that until I had the opportunity to do so. I was partial to Smite just because I liked the third-person view and having to aim to hit my skill shots rather than just click. I wasn't very good at the spam clicking thing, so clicking to move was a foreign idea for me. I'd rather just use WASD. So from that, from getting involved in Smite esports, that was mostly where I learned about building an ecosystem for traditional sports and applying it to video games. Just because they started off pretty grassroots. So basically, they just ran tournaments every week. It was $500 for North America, $500 for EU. That's just how they ran it for a long time until they had a pro league set up. So once they had the pro league, I followed that immensely. I was addicted to it, in fact. I was obsessed with the idea of playing at the time, but I realized I wasn't as good as the people that had been playing the game since inception. So because I wanted to be involved in the space, but I didn't know how I would do it if I was playing the game, I said, well, you know, these teams, like this team Dignitas, right? Like there's somebody that works for this. There's somebody that's operating this. I looked a bit into Team Dignitas and like found out who their CEO was, found out who their general manager was, and like how the company structure was. So that was what made me want to get involved in esports in the first place. It's because obviously these players are playing at a competitive level, so much so that they have teams that are interested in them to play at like, and represent a brand. So once I got involved and once I got working under different brands, I ended up here and I work for Armada Esports. As you can see, this is our website right here. It's just armada.gg. .gg is the tag used commonly for most esports organizations. There are some that'll use .net or .com, just to be general. But .gg is a common tag. So if you see it, more than likely they're an esports team. Just know that. As you can see, I'll just take you through the homepage real quick. There's sponsors that we have, Viper Gaming, Synapse, and Esports Arena. If you've ever heard of any of these companies, essentially what they do is they provide a service to us, and in exchange for the service or product that they provide to us, we provide marketing or advertisements to them. That's essentially how a partnership or a sponsorship ends up working. Now the differences between partnerships versus sponsorships is a partnership is usually mutual and it's just for a gain that isn't usually monetary. A strategic partnership is more of a power play, essentially. So an example of that would be Esports Arena. Esports Arena is a partnership for us. Essentially, we're invested into them, they're invested into us, and we're going in on their Esports Thursday tournaments, basically. So they're doing a Smash tournament every Thursday, and basically we add to that prize pool, and we advertise with them just to get the word out a little bit more, essentially, about it, just to build our name a little bit more in Colorado. So that's essentially where Esports Arena is based out of, the Esports Arena in Colorado, and where Armada is based out of as well. So as you can see, well, I'm here in Atlanta, so I work remote most of the time. So that's one of the perks of working in esports. Most of the jobs that exist are going to be remote jobs, unless you're working for your TSMs, your Team Liquids, like the bigger companies that are $1 million companies, essentially. So scrolling down further, you'll see that we have like upcoming events, recent matches, upcoming matches, and any of our latest news. So essentially we run it like any other team that you see. If you guys have ever watched the Atlanta Falcons or the Braves or anything like that, like, you know, they have a website that updates you on the players, their statistics, and everything about them. So everything that you can see about the company and about our players and about our streamers and about everything involved with the business is on this website. And more than likely, you're going to find plenty of esports teams out there that are all like this. This is a good structure to go with, so I use our company as an example for that. But moving on, one such avenue that we use to get our word out there about the brand itself is, of course, social media. Social media being one of the biggest ways to advertise a brand at this point is because everyone uses it. At least I'd say like 90% or so of the total population will. We use Twitter primarily. So if you do not have Twitter, automatically you are hindering yourself from working in esports. Just because most of the business management or operations or communications are coming through Twitter. Why? Because that's where the news is coming from. Everything's changing all the time in esports. So we needed a way, one, to communicate amongst each other, but also receive the news at the same time, so Twitter was the obvious choice. You didn't go with Facebook just because that was more family oriented. Most people just use that to talk to their family and friends. You didn't go with Instagram because it was very picture related, so it's very story driven, but it's good to lay out the groundwork after the news has already happened. So Instagram isn't what you're going to go for if you want to learn new things. That's where you're going to go to tell people about it once it's already happened, right? So Twitter was the obvious choice between those three. as far as keeping people in the loop of what's going on with your brand, your business, and your career, essentially. So this is our page. You usually give a very general bio. I'm not going to walk through Twitter. You know how to use Twitter. But what I do want to walk you through is another social media, specifically called LinkedIn. I believe LinkedIn is far more important than esports is making it out to be. I just recently started, forming my own personal brand into being the general manager of Armada and putting myself out there a little bit more on LinkedIn. I have met more people this way at a professional level than any other method. On Twitter, it's good for news, but if you want to network with people, if you want to meet the right people to collaborate with and to actually get job opportunities that could potentially lead you to furthering your career in the industry, make sure you're on LinkedIn. You want to follow any of the companies, all the same companies that you see on Twitter, you can follow on here, and all the same people that are managing teams or managing companies, they're on here as well. So you can make sure that you follow them, because you'll be updated on when important networking events like this one are happening. So you want to make sure that you're on that as well. Going off of keeping on the up and up on the news, there are different types of websites that you want to be able to go to for esports news. Same way how ESPN, Sports Center, all these other websites and television stations do their broadcasting through. We do our broadcasting primarily through news articles and video content. So YouTube's a good method, but also news outlets like Dexerto, like Upcomer. There's a bunch of different ones out there. PvP Live used to be one, but I think that one actually went out of business or changed itself at some point. But as you can see, they have updated news on what's happening in every scene, not just one. So if you wanted to keep on the up and up on major esports like Counter-Strike, Call of Duty, Fortnite, League of Legends, Overwatch, each one of those are ones that either have very clearly defined competitive ecosystems like Counter-Strike does, or they have franchise leagues like League of Legends and Overwatch and Call of Duty are about to have. So if you know anything about franchise leagues, or if you don't, that's definitely a good place to start educating yourself, because that's basically our application of using a sports structure and applying it to esports and competitive gaming. So does anyone in here watch the Overwatch League? Or have seen one broadcast, even one broadcast? All right? So there's only one hand not raised, so check it out when you get the opportunity. If you've ever checked out League of Legends, that's, yeah, not to put you on the spot, but you definitely want to check those out, just because that's where esports is headed. Every game probably won't be franchised in that way, just because that structure doesn't work for every esport. But for League of Legends, for Overwatch, I think it's definitely doing a really solid job of laying the groundwork and making a competitive story and a compelling story for the players to compete in, and creating opportunities for them, especially that are very financially beneficial for them as well. So obviously, news outlet is what we got to use to cover big esports ventures like that one. So yeah, that's pretty much all in regards to news. But now I want to get into the methods of managing an esports team. So one thing to touch on is people don't have access to a lot of information in regards to esports teams or how they're managed. So can anyone tell me how you think an esports team is managed? What do you think the structure is?
You have multiple managers and filling different roles. You have coaches for specific gameplay. You have someone who manages overall company or team performance and activities. You have someone who manages social media and the live streams. Probably different people for those two, but sometimes the same. You have player managers as well.
Yeah.
And equipment managers on top of that.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of what ends up happening. The structure obviously is in a very clear pyramid format. It's like there's a person at the top, or people at the top that are directors, essentially. Those are the individuals that are operating the business, the day-to-day financials and all of the legal aspects that go into that brand, especially when it comes to intellectual property. And what intellectual property is essentially it's just all things and all documents associated with your brand. That's going to be your limited liability company, so your LLC filing, your business. That's going to be your trademarks. That's going to be pretty much everything that you're going to run into on a legal aspect for operating a business. And that's for any business. That's not even just for esports. So it's essentially the same at the top level from one business to another. Now, where it gets a little more particular is when you go one tier down. That's where I am. I'm the general manager. So can anybody tell me what the general manager does just by hearing the title? A guess even.
Manage specific talent, I guess, for teams and like press recordings, events, and stuff like that.
That's one. That's one thing. Can you speak up for a little bit for me?
Like strategic decisions.
Okay. Anybody else got an idea?
I'm gonna hand the mic to the next person because I'm not getting anything.
Okay, sure. Yeah, we'll hand the mic around just whenever we ask questions moving forward. But yes,
Let's get some of those. So I'm just going to say set scheduling.
yes,
What were the ones down here?
yeah,
I said like strategic decisions based on like what the team needed to be doing or whatever.
Keep passing that.
And like managing like talent and coordinating events and stuff like that.
okay. All right, so all of you are correct, actually. Essentially, the day-to-day operations and everything that is associated with the brand, I end up in charge of. So I have my hand in just about everything outside of the financial aspect. The financial aspect is operated by the owners of that business. So they're the ones managing that. But anything else in regards to strategic elements or managing the players, teams, staff, that all comes through me, and it falls on me to ensure that it's being run successfully. So I feel like I'm doing an okay job if I'm here now. So, but yes, that's correct. So from the general manager, from an operations standpoint, you have a couple of departments that fall under that general manager. The first one being our esports and gaming. So that's going to be your teams that are playing in competitive games, and their managers and analysts, whomever are basically working with the teams to ensure that they stay competitive, and that they're on top of their game. The other department is going to be your operations department. That's going to be the staff that are ensuring that we have the resources and the tools that we need to be successful, not only as a sports team, but as a business as well. So that's going to be communications managers. Essentially what they do is tracking events and tournaments that are coming up, making sure that we schedule any flights or travel that are associated with it, lodging as well. There's going to be a director associated with the operations. There's going to be plenty of individuals that are working through that avenue pretty much. And then there's going to be your marketing department, which is easily your most important one, and that's just because it's associated with so many different facets of esports. Esports is essentially, I want to say like 80% marketing, especially from a team standpoint, because that's what you're using to sell your brand to other companies. You're using the marketing push essentially. So however, whatever your reach is, your target audience, everything that you reach is going to be something that other companies do not. So for example, let's say a non-endemic company wants to get in. I'm going to give you a non-endemic who's not in esports right now. Actually, I'll give you someone who is in esports, but that wasn't. Coca-Cola. For the longest time, Coca-Cola wasn't involved in esports. They did get involved in esports, and they primarily operated around getting involved with tournaments and professional leagues. That's how they wanted to push their brand and solidify themselves within the market. Now there are also their competitors. Red Bull. They took a little bit more like an hands-on method to actually marketing themselves within the community, and they primarily invested into the FGC, which is the fighting game community. any fighting games that were happening, basically they had what was called Red Bull Proving Grounds. So they had tournaments around the world, and each time somebody won in each one of those games, that was the person for that region, and they would fly them out to like the Red Bull Grand Finals, and each one person represented their local scene essentially. So everyone does it in a different way. So there's plenty of different ways, and it's very versatile in how you can get involved in esports and how companies have decided to get involved in esports as well. And it didn't matter whether they had something that was intrinsic, something that was actually needed, or something that was just their brand and them wanting to contribute in some way. So it didn't matter. Esports was welcoming to pretty much everyone, which is why it's so important for us to understand exactly how we as individuals can be involved and can contribute and add value once we do contribute. Because right now there's some contributors and everyone doesn't add value all the same. So, but as for, let's say you guys wanted to leave here and you're like, oh, I've thought about working in esports before, but I don't know where to go. What website do I go to? When you're looking for a job, where do you go? If you're looking for a general, just a day job, where do you go? Monster.com, that's one. Which one?
GGA website.
GGA website will work.
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn is also a website as well. Did you have one? LinkedIn was one? All right. So basically these websites basically have recruiters on them. They search for individuals to find for different positions, right? But esports doesn't work that way. In most cases, they're not searching for you. You're going to have to go out and get it yourself. So how do you do that? Hitmarker is one such example. So this is a job search thing. Let's say I wanted to be a writer. So we'll type in writer, we'll search that real quick. So they have different types of jobs that pop up just from that. So there's like a game writer, specifically for Apex Legends. There's a copywriter, which is legal, and that's for Riot Games. So you're definitely gonna have to know your stuff there. So every different job is something completely inherent from each one. Technical writers, do a little bit of work with development environments, and that's for Twitch specifically. So they list not only jobs for esports teams or companies, but they're doing this for businesses that are associated in gaming as well. So as you can see just from this list, we have EA, Riot Games, the Esports Observer, Twitch, Exerto, which was right here. So you can be a writer and search for a position right there. Rectify Gaming, which is another team. Chords Network, which is specifically a writing network. And then Dot Esports, which is another network as well. So as you can see, there's plenty of different jobs that you can hunt for. You can hunt for a full-time job if you're feeling confident, you feel like you have a professional resume that's ready to go, and you know for a fact you're going to be the right person for this. There's 820 full-time jobs right now. That doesn't include 32 part-time, 88 freelance, 22 intern, and 87 volunteer. I highly suggest the volunteer if you're going for your first one. Volunteer at least once. Obviously, I think you guys deserve to be paid for your work. That's really important. But you also have to be willing to get your experience first if you're looking to get into esports specifically. So I would always suggest, volunteering in a role that's something that you're at least relatively passionate about, and just get started there. Get some fundamentals, get your groundwork first, and then work your way into something else that you feel like you'd be passionate about. Because right now, honestly, if you want to work for an esports team, you wouldn't even know where to go. You wouldn't know which department you even want to work in. So you want to see basically what you're good at. Find out what you're good at by working with volunteer opportunities, essentially. But yeah, working outside of that as well, just to show you guys some of the tools that I end up using as a general manager just to do my job. For one, it's esports charts. This is what I use primarily for doing my research on what games are trending. This has statistics for just about every game and its total viewership, its recent tournaments and how much viewership it brought in, how much traction was it bringing in, what was the greatest game that happened within that event. So let's use an example. Somebody give me a game. What's an esport? Tekken. Let's type it, unless I can't type. that's also possible. All right, so let's load up tech and let's see what happens there. Tekken Master. That's teams, organizers, tournaments. Tekken World Tour Finals. That was last year, but we'll use that as an example because we know that all the statistics are going to be there. So let's open that up. So the date was February 12th, 2018 of last year. Prize pool was about $25,000. This was an offline tournament, which literally just means it was a LAN tournament. They were on site, and it was in Amsterdam, as you can see. Total time watched is an important metric, especially if it's including a market. So if including Chinese platform, it was at 562,000, but excluding it was at 547,000. And the reason why they use Chinese as whether it's inclusion or not, or excluded essentially, is just because the largest amount of viewers per square mile is probably in China. The amount of added viewership that China alone can have, just because of how large the population is so significant that they feel that it's necessary to mention that, hey, this is the metric that you have, including your Chinese viewers, and this is the metric that you have without. So as you can see, excluding China, it was 547,000, so China doesn't necessarily watch Tekken, so you automatically get that from that statistic. And then you have your average CCV just standing for concurrent viewership. That's just how many views on average per hour, right? So you had 41,702, including Chinese, and then your average excluding at 40,000. So on average, about 1,000 less excluding Chinese viewers. Airtime total is the total time, excluding rebroadcast, so that's 14 hours. So from the time that it went live the first time, and then the time that the tournament was done, it was a total time of 14 hours essentially. And then the total views at the end, and this is including all channels, not just Twitch. And that's important just because Twitch metrics are very important, but if you're not only broadcasting on Twitch, you want to make sure that you have the metrics for everything that's being viewed. So the total was about 1.2 million of individuals that watched it globally from different networks. So that was Facebook, Panda TV, which is your Chinese network, and then Twitch as well. Excuse me. So down here, you'll see peak viewership. Overall peak was at 61,803. And then on the right side, you'll see that the matches and specific players, who had the highest viewership, who did people want to watch more than others. So Kudon versus Rong 2, which I believe was the grand finals. So the 61,796 on average viewership came from the grand final essentially. So we know that the best match on average was the grand final. Now the reason why this is important is sometimes in other tournaments, the grand final isn't the most important match. So that means that there's a fan favorite associated in there, and he may have gotten knocked out early. So that means the viewership may end up either spiking or dropping depending on what happens. If there is a fan favorite in there, or there's like an underdog story is probably one of the best ones in the best things to happen in esports, just because everyone's interested in the underdog. Everyone likes the person that nobody's heard of, but just came out of nowhere and is kicking everyone's ass. So who doesn't like that? So that's in general how most statistics go. And that's just one resource that you can use just to analyze exactly, what the value is for getting into a specific esport, like what the value of a player would be playing Tekken, right? So at any point I can say, oh, Nee is a free agent. I don't think he is anymore, but Nee's a free agent. I want to pick him up because he made it all the way to the losers finals and had 57,000 people watching him. And the reason why that would be important is because if he has my jersey on, that means this sponsor, Synapse, and this sponsor, Viper Gaming, get those views to their brand. Now that amount of people are now seeing this player compete at this level. So that means they get to see this brand, and they're like, oh, well, who's the sponsor? All right, so his sponsors Armada. All right, who are their sponsors? Okay, so these are the companies. It's all a marketing play, essentially, right? So you want players on your team to represent your brand so as to market themselves to the general public that you would otherwise not reach. All right, and one other website that we use is Twitch Tracker. And ideally what we use for this, does anyone stream in here? What's your Twitch?
AAST.
AAST?
Correct.
All right, so using Twitch Tracker basically is going to give you the metric for one channel and all of its statistics, essentially. So once this loads, we can see for this week, the hours streamed are 19.8 hours, and that's up by 1% from the previous week. So obviously you have that metric going up. Average viewers are at 7, peak viewers are at 16, hours watched at 138, followers gained at 8. So basically you have a bunch of statistics, but what does all this mean? How does this translate? What is the most important thing that you're looking for? So a couple things that we as an esports company look for in our streamers, because we do pick up streamers as well as professional players, because they have just as much value. Primarily what we're looking at are hours streamed. How long are you streaming? So that means how dedicated are you? Are you treating this like a full-time job? For a full-time job, every week is 40. It's 40 weeks, or excuse me, 40 hours per week, right? So for 4 weeks out of the month, that's going to be 160 hours. How close to that 160 hour mark are you? Are you streaming full-time? If you are under 160 hours, automatically the answer is no. You are not a full-time streamer. So if you are not streaming for at least 40 hours a week, like it is your day job, then no, you're not a full-time streamer. But part-time streamers have value as well. Twitch affiliates are just as valuable as anyone else, too. Are you a Twitch partner or Twitch streamer? Or Twitch affiliate?
Affiliate.
That's good. It's perfect for this example. So, the hours watched, and I think I'm going to need a calculator for this. I'm not so good at math.
Yeah, you're about to get a really weird set for this last month.
Probably.
Those numbers are all.
Yeah, more than likely. So, yeah, so this isn't necessarily the last month anyway, so let's go into the statistics. Because this is only, when you click on the month for Twitch Tracker specifically, it's going to give you the last 30 days, but that's including the days that you're currently in, too. So you're halfway into June, or you're halfway through June, halfway through July. So you want to get what his last month metrics were.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and say those numbers are all.
It doesn't matter what they actually are. It's just for this example.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
just for this example.
Just
Just showing what like in general esports companies end up looking for. So by no means do I think your metrics are bad at all.
Oh, no, they're great. Just make sure you're using more than one source.
For
You'll
sure.
always get weird numbers if you don't. Your curves always look weird.
Yeah, this is just one source, and sometimes the API can be wrong just because they're pulling from Twitch. So sometimes it doesn't pull.
Twitch's API is not great.
Yes.
Just
So,
keep that in mind when you look at this.
for the month of June, this account has a total of 93 increased followers, total views of 3.5, hours streamed at 123. So honestly, you're really close to that full-time mark
This is one
anyway.
of our weaker weeks. Yeah. We,
Yeah.
we
So like,
took
so
40
like,
off.
so like for that month, you guys definitely did a really good job. And then hours watched at 4.9 thousand. So hours are actually not going to be the metric that we're looking for. We're actually looking for minutes. So we need to convert. So if it's 4,900 hours, we got to multiply this by 60 so that we can get how many minutes watched were these guys getting last month. So that's 294,000 minutes that this particular channel, this one channel, was watched. So why is that important? It's just because that's how many minutes that we would have our brand shown if he's streaming for us. Those are now minutes that people are seeing our brand, Armada, specifically because he streams for us. He does not actually stream for us. However, in this scenario, he streams for us. So let me give you an example of our stream team and how we utilize Twitch and its metric system. Someone has already gone offline. All right, 2 people have gone offline. All right, everyone's gone.
Refresh it, it'll read the whole thing.
Everyone's going offline. That's fine. Either way, essentially what ends up happening is while they're live, they have a certain amount of people viewing them. That's how they're generating their CCV and building up the hours or minutes watched in this case. And under their stream, they have the team right here, and it says Armada out next to it. So not only do they get to see that our name is right there, but also on screen while they're streaming, we have slideshow panels that are basically showing that advertise our brand and our sponsors. And that's on every single stream. So that's not including just the one channel. So for one channel, we'd end up getting a certain amount of minutes. So let's say that 292,000 that the other number was at, but let's say we have another streamer that's at 1 million for that month, and another one that's at 15 million for that month, right? So that number, those numbers are going to add up depending on how many streamers we have, and I believe we're at 30 at this point, actually 28 in total. So if we have 28 separate streamers, each one of them are advertising Armada, and each one of them are generating minutes to a specific amount, that's going to add up and end up at a number that sponsors are going to like, because that's time that their brand and their products and services are being viewed. And just from viewing it, somebody could end up wanting it, especially peripherals. People always want PC peripherals, so Viper Gaming especially is going to like it because that increases the possibility of somebody wanting to say, hey, I need a new mouse, so let me go buy this mouse. They have a really cool one. He just advertised this on his stream, and he likes it, so maybe I want to buy it. Now, maybe like 1 or 2% in total of any stream is going to be that way. Like oftentimes they're not going to generate actual sales data, and that's fine because what we're trying to do is advertise. All we need you to do is see it. You don't have to buy it. That helps, but all we want you to do is click it and see it. Once you've seen it, you add to that view. Now you've seen Armada, now you've seen the brand, now you've seen our sponsors. All right? And I want to say that's pretty much it, actually. Yeah. So I guess we could open it up for questions now. In the meantime.
All right, I'll start off questions and then pass it around. Two-part question, and I understand if you don't want to answer each part of this. For a team on the scale of Armada, what is the general annual budget range for something like that? What sort of figures are people talking about for an annual budget?
For any company around our size, you're looking at companies that have maybe anywhere from $1,000 to $5,000 to spend on average per month. So upwards of anywhere from, I want to say 10, 12,000 to 60,000 in total a year. So not really a big budget if you're running a company, right? Like it sounds like a lot if you're an individual, but this is a company, you manage multiple people, multiple assets. So it's not that much money in the grand scheme of things usually.
So what are the main revenue streams then for you? Obviously everyone thinks of the purses, but that's not very predictable. What are the main revenue streams and what percent generally do they contribute?
All right, so first I'll start with what isn't our revenue stream. So first of all, a lot of people think, oh, we see these big prize pool numbers, like Call of Duty's got a $2 million tournament coming up, right? So, oh yeah, and Fortnite's got a $30 million tournament coming up, right? So let me explain to you how percentages work. So, with a Fortnite player, I don't think they're going to get the full 30 million. Maybe they'll get 10 million if they win first place for that, right? But now let's get into percentages. For a player as good as, let's say, Tfue, who may end up winning the Fortnite World Cup, you might be able to get a total of 3% of that at best. So the higher the prize pool of the game, the lower the percentage of the prize pool that you're going to be taking as a company. So prize pools in general are not a good metric to judge how much esports companies make. Even though you see that number, that's more than likely going to the players, more so than the actual company itself. Unless the company is providing a significant amount of benefits, more than likely they're not receiving a large cut of that prize pool. So now to answer your question, what do they receive it from? Media rights is one. Essentially, it's in partnership with the companies that are broadcasting these esports games. So Fortnite is going to be Epic Games, so you'd be in partnership with Epic Games. and then selling your your sole proprietorship and selling your overall image and your brand. So that's one method. Another method would end up being selling of your players' contracts. So if another team that's bigger than you wants your players specifically, they're going to ask you what their buyout is. How can I purchase their contract? And on average, those are usually around, it's game dependent, but it's anywhere from around 2,000 to 10,000, sometimes upwards 100,000, depending on what game you're playing. I'll go ahead and tell you right now, Faker's number for League of Legends buyout, if somebody wants to purchase his contract, it's entirely too much. You cannot purchase Faker. I don't care what company you play for, you cannot purchase Faker. But for games like Smite, where the buyouts are significantly lower because the viewership is significantly lower as well, so the overall dollars that you stand to make in that game are significantly lower. It's a pretty sizable amount. Whoops. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So I'll keep holding until the folks want.
Yeah. Whoever's got questions, please ask.
Does Armada sponsor collegiate esports teams? And how do you do that?
Okay. So I guess I can give you the rundown on how esports works from an educational standpoint versus how it works from a professional standpoint. Right now, the structure is being built out to be a growth structure. So from high school, you have Play Versus and the High School Esports League that you can compete in. You can potentially get scholarships to go to college and play for esports teams. And there's at least, I want to say, around 40 total high school programs that are offering that now. So that's for high school. For college, to answer your question, no, we don't sponsor colleges. What happens with colleges is that your particular college has to reach out to a Department of Education or to a governance and let them know that you want to be involved in esports and gaming. You would then, one, establish a club first of people that are just wanting to play video games at a competitive level and enjoy esports and its community for what it is. And then from that, when there's interest generated from there, you can build out an esports program. And what happens with that is you'll start making a junior varsity or a varsity program. Some examples are NACE, National Association of Collegiate Esports. So I believe their acronym. But NACE is one such collegiate esports thing. TESPA is another one. It's a pretty large one. So it depends on what chapter and what level of game that you're going to be playing, and which one of these that you're going to be competing in. But more than likely, they provide support to your team and your school specifically. So all you have to do is create a community, reach out to these esports programs so that you can start generating interest in NACE or in TESPA or any of the other programs that currently exist at a collegiate level, and just help them understand that this is something that can get students involved. Like it's a known fact. So when students have something that they connect with and that they're passionate about, they are going to commit to it heavily. This is the same for anyone that wants to play sports at a professional level. I'll use football as an example. When someone wants to go to college and they want to play football, they have to keep their grades at a certain level, and then they're allowed to stay on the team so long as they're within the confines of whatever their requirements are, and they're paid by essentially allowing them to purchase through their tuition. Like they almost never have to pay for tuition or anything really in regards to school. The same principle applies for this. Ideally, we want to set up collegiate programs so that, one, students are more engaged, students want to do better academically, and students have something that they are passionate about and that they can compete in, and still, help with that student debt that always plagues everyone as well. So, to answer your question, Armada does not, and no other company is going to either. But esports programs are built by students, so by you. if you have somebody or others that are interested, please get started today. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
So, let's say you're looking to expand to a new game. How would, like I said, if y'all have an esports and a new game that came up, how would y'all go about that? Like as far as recruiting and, or say there's a game that's already been established, how would y'all go about creating a team like that for esports?
Okay. Well, it depends on how organized that new game is and how involved their esports is, right? So are you speaking from the perspective of there's a new game and that game is still in beta, like it's still being beta tested, but it's doing some esports community?
Yeah, like let's say for example, Apex recently. Right, that game almost came out of nowhere, but
Yeah.
immediately you saw teams started signing players, contracts, and stuff like that. So how would y'all, as Armada or just esports team in general, kind of see that and go on to do something like signing a player straight out like that?
So specifically for Apex, just to speak to your example, if we're looking for top talent, more than likely we're going to look for a track record, right? So here's what we understand. From Apex, it is also a battle royale game, meaning that anyone that was successful in Fortnite but didn't, make the cut in that game, and they particularly liked Apex a little bit, they probably moved over from Fortnite to Apex. Well, how do they do in Fortnite? What's their track record? How do they do in other BRs, essentially? Because the overall premise of the game is exactly the same. They're just changing up a few things here and there just based off the mechanics that change. So now they have abilities instead of just guns in Fortnite, right? So more than likely they're going to be using metrics like that, but they're also going to be looking at who's a top content creator, who is on the forefront of this game that is making interesting and engaging content. Those are going to be the recruits that you're looking at. Who's performing well and who has a track record of performing well, and then who's creating engaging content, because teams need content in order to reach a larger demographic and a larger market of individuals. So that's primarily what we use as a metric, at least. Any other questions? Yeah.
Do players play multiple games, or are they like focused on just one? And like, how many teams would you have generally?
That's a good question. It depends is the answer to that question. So for example, for League of Legends, more than likely you're grinding League of Legends for some odd, is that only 170 or 160 hours? Yeah, you're probably grinding for about 100 hours a week, in all honesty. To be good at League of Legends, you gotta grind for a long time. Like, you gotta be really good at that game. So, in League of Legends, you're more than likely only playing League of Legends. You eat, breathe, and sleep League of Legends. But if you're a fighting game player, you're more than likely playing multiple fighting games. For example, there's an individual named Sonic Fox. He is good at every fighting game in existence. Don't understand why, but the guy makes entirely too much money because no matter what the fighting game is and no matter how new it is, he's at the top of it. There are just some people that are blessed, but he's a bit of both. He's both blessed and he works hard, because this is a man that is studying to be a game designer and create his own fighting game. So in his time to create video games, he is also beating everyone in fighting games and using all of that money to fund him creating a fighting game. So to that degree, yes, you can play multiple video games. However, it depends on the game and how much time you're willing to put into it. You probably won't have a social life either, by the way.
So the thing that we've seen most bring down teams are internal player dissension. So obviously teams recruit not just for skill, but for team members who can work together effectively. How do you as a general, or how does a team actually analyze that and take that into account when they're recruiting?
I take it actually very seriously. There are some that do not mind when there's drama amongst their players and teams. I would rather avoid that altogether because we don't have anyone for public relations, so I'm the only one. So in the end, I'm the one that's going to have to deal with it, and I'd rather just nip in the bud right then. I don't want to deal with that. So when looking for teams, you want to find people that, one, have a proven track record to be synergistic and working together, and that they've been working together for an extended period of time. That's primarily what I'm looking for. If you come to me and you tell me you have this team of people that want to play in this tournament, and I can actually use an example that I actually just got the other day. There's a team that wants to play Call of Duty and wants us to fly them to Miami. Not going to name any names, but one player is already off the team and they're replacing him. You want me to fly you to Miami next weekend, like not even a full 7 days away, to plan for something like this, and you don't even have a full roster of 5. There's no stability in that. Nobody wants to invest into something that's not stable. Nobody wants to make an unstable investment. So, to me, and to answer your question, I'm not going to bother with somebody that isn't synergistic or a team that isn't synergistic.
And it's proven that they are.
Yes.
So I know that esports isn't as different as traditional sports, but what is the esports industry doing to get a step closer on having educational institutions get more involved, and treat it like an actual sport, since there is a market, it's a multi-million-dollar market. So what are the steps that maybe Armada is doing to get closer to that, if Armada's taking steps?
The steps that I'm taking I'm here right now to tell everyone about this, essentially, that this is something that you can do if you're passionate about doing it, but you have to be passionate about doing it. And I mean so passionate, so much so that you're willing to do a day job that you don't really want to do, but on the off time that you're not at that day job, you're working on your passion project, i.e. esports. If you want to work in esports, that's, for a time, it's going to be your passion project, until it's something that you can actually commit to long term, and it's something that pays you a reasonable amount. And sometimes it's going to pay you an unreasonable amount, and that's going to be a good thing. So, yeah, I would say just stick to your guns, really. Try to get involved, try to get others involved, inspire other people to, get involved in the industry. But I guess I can also add to that very briefly. Right now, there's, I guess you could say, a divide, an opportunity for a lot of people to work in the industry because there's a lack of education. Nobody knows how to teach themselves how to work for an esports team or for a brand that's running their pro league, right? Nobody knows how to learn how to be a community manager except by just getting involved in the community and doing random things. There's no education to that. However, there are programs that are starting to pop up that are willing to teach you about esports management and about live broadcast and about different aspects of the industry in general. One such, from Hitmarker, if you are on that website, the first thing, I don't know if anybody noticed, at the top of, that is not the website. Hitmarker, I've been bamboozled, I'm sorry. That's the website, hello. So at the top, anybody read up there what they see? Anybody, doesn't matter.
Improvement advice.
Boom. They got ways. Just gotta look for them, really. And you really gotta want to go out of your way to look for them, because nobody's gonna come to you and do it for you. So you gotta be that go-getter. You have to be the one with the initiative. And also, what I was also pointing at was right here, their advertisement, University of California, Irvine, Esports Management Program. It is online. You do not have to change schools. You do not have to move to Irvine if you would like to learn. You might have to pay a fee though, but if you want to learn it, isn't it worth it? Career advice is here, recruitment advice is here as well. You have the resources. You also have me. Each one of you will be able to connect with me following this. If you have LinkedIn, I would highly suggest connecting with me on that. If you got Twitter, definitely follow me on that because I'm always on there. So you can follow me there too. But yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? You got one? All right. Thank you so much for your time, guys.